everyone. Welcome to our session from London, A Creative's Journey. I'm Akosua Asare. I'm a PR major here. I'm with the Mass Comm team week this year, and I have with me Jaenelle Felciano, who is the Assistant Creative Director at Weber Shandwick, who I've had the opportunity to meet when I studied abroad in London my freshman year. And since we aren't studying abroad because of COVID, I thought it was really important that we got an international perspective for Mass Comm Week. So if you guys have any questions, we'll do a Q&A at the end, but throughout Jaenelle's presentation, you can put questions in the chat or you can raise your hand at the end by clicking participants and then raising your hand, and I'll call on you and you can talk to her directly. And with that, I'll let Jaenelle start.
Cool. Hi, guys. So it's a nice, intimate 13, 12 of us. So I'm going to kind of just share my screen. And I guess this whole talk it's not really just about my journey. I think it's going to be kind of what does a creative director do? How did I get here? And then kind of just covering loads of different things I've kind of learned along the way. Just to give you a quick kind of gist of it, I've been doing this now for about 10 years, which is a long time. A decade is a long time. It's flown by. But, I think there's a lot of differences. I started, I'm originally from the States, but I've lived in London for the past 13 years and I've went to university here as well. So I think there's a few differences that, if you want to talk about that as well at the end, we can always kind of pick that up as well. So let us just begin then. So let me share my screen. And get into that presentation mode. Okay, here we are. Okay, so I am Jaenelle Felciano. Here's all the goods that you guys, if you guys want to take a look at it, the Twitter, my email, do a little screen grab, get that all done together. That's my portfolio at the bottom. So like, Rose was saying, there you go. I'm an associate creative director. And, a lot of people aren't really sure, like, what is that? Definitely a lot of people they ask me, what does a creative director do? And I like to kind of put it into really simple terms, especially for my mom, who still struggles to tell everyone what I do back home. And I guess the simplest way of kind of putting into really simple terms is that I think of ideas and I make stuff. I think that's the kind of gist of it, right? Because what a creative director does is, you start out as a junior creative where you're an art director or a copywriter, and at the heart of it, all you have to do, whether you have the copywriting skills or the art direction skills, is just all about thinking of ideas and making things happen. So I think, what is it, when we say stuff, what does it mean? I think we have all seen kind of Mad Men. We know what it looks like. We know what you can make TV ads. So the stuff could look like, for example, it could be a TV ad. I've done that for Valentine's, did some whiskey TV ads for them. It could be, on a truck. It could be posters. It could be for the government, which is kind of what this was for, partner to Santander for this new cycle scheme. It could be a proactive pro bono kind of piece that you do in your office. So we did this where we hacked the doors in our offices and we changed it to donation mechanic. So that's stuff, or it could be even something like a piece of tech. This is where we hack some pieces of tech, and it's like a hand that kind of reacts to what you see. And it was all about teaching people empathy, what it's like to not have your senses. So I think when I say stuff, the great thing about advertising, PR, communications is that it can literally be anything. It could be a physical object, it could be an idea, it could be a film. So I think what's the interesting and fun part is that I don't think you really get this when you're studying is how do you actually make the stuff? Because I think making the stuff is actually the fun bit. It's where the most creativity happens. It's where I think a lot of my skills and a lot of the fun really happens. So I'm going to kind of just show you where stuff happens, basically. So I'm going to show you how to make a campaign, but obviously in the most super simplified way, because there's a billion ways to make a campaign. But I'm going to show you using a campaign that recently launched that I did. I think it launched yesterday, and it was for breast cancer. And so the campaign's called Love Them, Hate Them, Check Them. And I'm just going to do a step-by-step on how we got to this campaign, and kind of what the step-by-steps are when you go all the way from the clients and all the way to the very end, and what does that kind of look like, and what's that kind of journey. Because I think what's important for you guys is that you're coming at it at such a fresh space that you can figure out, do I want to be an account handler? Do I want to be, do I want to do traditional PR and write all the press releases and make something famous? Or do I want to go down the route that I've gone down, which is more the creative direction route? And then hopefully that'll give you an insight about what the type of roles are. Obviously, I'm just going to give you like a nutshell of what the roles are, but I think it's good to kind of just figure out, oh, that kind of sounds like something that I'd like to do. And then, if you have any questions about that, we can always dive back in, and I can kind of expand a bit on these kind of roles that maybe you haven't seen yet when you're doing your degree. Okay, so first of all, we have our account handlers. And the very first step is about, our account handlers reaching out to clients and seeing, what's the new brief. Or maybe the clients reach back out to us and they give us a new brief. But the whole point is that our account handlers are like the best friends of the client, right? They speak to the clients. They want to understand the goals of their brand. They want to know, what do they need? What's the actual piece of content that we need to communicate right now? And back in the day, that might have been done with some whining and dining. We don't really do that anymore because budgets are smaller. But if that's the kind of reference, with the whole like bit in culture and Mad Men and everything like that, that's kind of what you've seen, right? The account handlers are they're like my best friend, because they're all about getting all that new business in, and they're all about being your kind of like sidekick when it comes to selling and work. So you can see here that this is Claire. She's my account handler on this project for breast cancer now. She spoke to the clients. It was actually like a friend of hers that was in this, and they reached out and they said, we got this really interesting opportunity for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we were wondering if you would be interested into trying to do something for us. So she found that kind of like opportunity, that proactive kind of opportunity. So account handlers are always looking for new opportunities, like where are we going to get the next business? So they're always like really on top of it. So she reached out. Then what they do is they give you a brief. They say, this is the problem that we want to solve. And the kind of next step, once they get the problem, they say, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We really want an interesting piece of communication. What can you do for us? So Claire then takes that over to our strategist. And a strategist is a person that makes a plan of where the brand should go. So the strategist is going to take the client's brief, the client's problem, and they're going to say, okay, this is the brief, which is the brief that I'm going to get as a creative. And it just says here, this is actually like copy and pasted what they gave me. So the strategist wrote this brief. It says here, we have an opportunity to work in this pro bono opportunity for breast cancer now. And what they want, a campaign to encourage women to check their breasts for signs of breast cancer. And then it said, kind of the deliverables, which is it needs to be different types of creative assets. So film, posters, radio script, all these different things. And then they give you a bit of a tone on the bottom about like the direction where they want to go. So they want something different. They want something loud. They want something that's very different from what everyone has seen. It's not fluffy or schmaltzy. It's not what you normally see with breast cancer kind of communications. They want something a bit different. And then they also tell you at the bottom, which is very important, the budget. Because when there's no budget, you have to really think really differently, and you need to pull in all your kind of favorites to make something really amazing happen. So a strategist basically looks at the client's problem and interprets it for the creative. Because sometimes as a creative, you'll get a client's brief and it just won't make any sense to you. So you need a strategist to go inside, really interrogate the problem and figure out what's the best solution. And then they bring that to us, and then that then brings us to the creatives. So what we do with that brief is that then I'll go away and I will literally come up with loads and loads and loads and loads of ideas. So the slides that I'm going to show you next are actually a few of the ideas that I came up with, that we're looking at different ways of going into the brief. So we ran it up together. It's all about coming up with interesting ideas to bring the strategist plan to life. So one of the ideas was this one here, where it said, stick it to cancer, where we wanted to create like beautiful kind of like nipple stickers to showcase how to check your breast, because there's that whole thing in Facebook, and Instagram where you're not allowed to showcase like nipples. So we're thinking, is that one way to go around it? Just to show how to do a breast exam. Another idea that we were looking at was this kind of 6 minutes to your best breast, where we kind of twist some sort of like well-known, about fitness influencers, and we're saying about getting the 6 minutes to the perfect boobs, but actually when you watch the film, it's actually it's a self-exam. So I think that's a kind of like twist. We're thinking about different twists of way we can get there, but the way that we actually settled on and that the whole team really liked was this kind of idea here. And it's like rough stages before it became love them or hate them, check them. It was best friends forever. So it's this whole concept about how that we all have this love-hate relationship with our breasts. And some days they're beautiful, other days we feel that they're too big or too small. Sometimes our wing women, other times again the way. But no matter what, we don't want them out of our lives. We wouldn't want cancer to take them away, you see. So this is the kind of concept that we're thinking about. It's all about gathering these kind of stories from women all over the UK, and then we would turn these stories into a beautiful film. So you can already see at the heart of it what the idea is going to turn into. So everyone says in the team, the account handler, the strategist, they go, we love it, this is what we're going to go forward with. And then the next step is that you then go into the room or the Zoom call and you pitch the idea to the client. And this can go a million different ways. Luckily, this went really well, and everyone was like, that's exactly what we want to do. So then what we did next was, after that, once you kind of sell in the idea, and to be honest, selling in the idea is probably the most fun bit, I would say. Like, I love selling in the idea. There's nothing more of a high than selling in the idea. After that, what you want to do, once it's sold in, then the client says, okay, here's some money. Let's make it happen. How are we going to bring this to life? And what you want to do is you want to find the best kind of creators to work with, right? And I heard that you guys yesterday, there was someone who was a TikTok influencer. That's their creator, right? There's someone that creates content. Or you might work with a film director, or you might work with an artist. In our case, we decided to work with an animator. So this woman here, her name is Anna Ginsberg. She's a really amazing kind of specializing in this kind of like feminist kind of artistry, this animation style that she has. It's very like quite psychedelic, a bit modern, I would say, which kind of fit that whole brief of kind of being a bit different and not schmaltzy and something a bit new. So creators, basically, that's the importance of always absorbing different types of creators as a creative. You want to make sure you're looking around the world to see what's cool, what's new, what's beautiful, so that you can apply it to your own work. So we worked with Anna. I told her about the concept. I said, this is what we want to do. I wrote her a script. So this is the script in its most, like another screen grab, in its most basic form. So I give her this. This is my thoughts. And then she says, you know what? I'm going to turn it into some really simple storyboards. So then she sends me these roughs of what my script was. So you can see kind of here, I say we see a teenage girl, her hands uncomfortably close over her small breasts. And then you can see that it kind of just kind of builds. But then what she has done is she's kind of given it into her own style and her own interpretation. And then she kind of talks us through what the next steps are going to be. So after this, what happens next is that you then turn it into an animatic. So an animatic, in the least kind of technical term, it's literally the step in between storyboards, which are like singular frames, and then the kind of like final thing, which is completely smooth and super animated. So I'm just going to show you the animatic that she gave us. So this, I think, maybe was the second or third animatic. So let me just show you. So that is just a really quick, she just wanted to demonstrate what the story could kind of look like. So she just did a quick like 30 seconds, which is just to give us a look and feel. And you can kind of already see what her style kind of looks like and where it was going next. And then you do that maybe about like 5 or 6 times. She does loads and loads of these. And then eventually she adds in color. She then adds in, we get a sound person to do all the sound effects, and you get someone to do kind of score the music for it. And then what you end up with is finally, after also doing a lot of back and forth with your client, because the client has a lot to say, especially on certain scenes, is that you then end up with the final product. And so this is the final product. Cool. Yeah, so the whole point of this campaign was, because what this campaign is, I think it's just about telling the honest stories of that women have with their breasts in order to create conversation that encourage then women to then be more open about talking about their breasts and therefore more likely to check them as well. And I think that was the whole point of this. And as it's, it launched yesterday, and it's definitely been all about the conversations that's been happening here in the UK around it. There's definitely a lot of people, it's exactly what we wanted. There's a lot of talk about love, and there's a lot of talk about hate. And I think for us, it's all about having that kind of tension and making sure that people will talk about it. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all we really want to accomplish. When it comes to communication and making really good work, you want people to talk about it, because if they're not talking about it, if it's in the background, if it's not, if it doesn't say something strongly, and it means that you haven't really said anything at all, right? Like if you're falling towards the back and something's a bit beige, then it's almost, well, what was the point of making that communication? Especially when you have a client that doesn't have a lot of money, especially when they're a charity, right? You need to make sure that their money and their budget really stretches as far as they can. So we want to create something that is, that creates conversation. And I think what's also really good about this here, right, is that a lot of the work, it's really important to make sure a lot of your work comes from an honest place. And every single frame in here, every single scene is all inspired by, the hundreds of women that I interviewed and asked them to tell me their love-hate relationship stories with their breasts. So yeah, it was a very, very fun little bit. So as a creative, that's kind of what I do and the outputs of the campaign. And then after that, because it doesn't end there actually. So you make the work, and from this I made, radio ads, Facebook posts, GIFs, Instagram, Insta story posts. Like then you make all the collateral that goes alongside it. So then the next, oh, no, we don't want to do that. There we go. Okay, so then once you have all the assets, you can then give it to your community managers and also your traditional kind of PR folk, who are then going to make sure that everyone who needs to see it does, and that they share it, right? Because I think you can make something, but if you don't have the people who are going to be behind you, that are going to share, if you don't have a plan to share it and how everyone's going to see it, then it gets stuck in its own silos, right? It's just posted is not enough. And that's where, paid comes importantly. That's where traditional PR and like reaching out and talking to journalists comes into importance. And then obviously your community managers as well. So I think, as a job, that's a whole other thing as well. You got your media planners who try and figure out what's the best places to plan this media, where are we going to post this film, how are we going to do these posts, what's the scheduling. Those people are whizzes at what they do. You have your traditional PR folk who are amazing at pitching work. If you love pitching work and on the phone, making sure that the work gets the share it deserves, that's kind of also great as well. And this is just a few of the pieces that, have come out since yesterday. And I think, it's just about gaining that kind of traction and seeing what else, where else is this kind of going to go, and creating that kind of conversation. I think if you're, if that's something you love, I think that's also really, like, all these kind of pieces are just so important. They're a big part of the puzzle. So after kind of that kind of goes, you've done your campaign, it's kind of, exploded, it's going places. What kind of happens next is then you just kind of celebrate. I think that's the most important part that you need to remember, because everyone at this point, right, has let's see, this campaign, it's something like this should have taken maybe like 3 months or 6 months, but it took us like about a month actually. So everyone was already at each other's like necks, ready to to destroy each other towards the end, and everyone was dying of sleep. But I think that's why it's so important to congratulate your team, to support one another, and make sure you properly celebrate, because at the end of the day, it's all that kind of hard work and seeing your vision, the team effort. Because as you can see, as a step by step goes, is not just the creative director's work. It's literally everyone's work, because I couldn't come up with this thing. My strategist didn't come up with the plan, and if the account handler didn't get the business, like it's not a one person job. It's literally like a team effort. So I think that's the really kind of important thing to know as well. So definitely celebrate. So I think here is just kind of laid out, how to make a campaign, super simplified. And these are kind of like the main kind of job roles within each and every single thing. Within creators, you have graphic designers, illustrators, film directors, I don't know, sound producers, artists, craftsmen, like you put everyone in there. And then the one person I actually didn't put a slide on, but I think is also super, super important and could be a really interesting role for anyone, is right there at the bottom corner, called the producer. So a producer basically rounds us all up to make sure that we're all doing our job. They keep everything in check. They make the whole machine is well, oiled, because especially creatives, we can forget stuff. We can, forget to go to a radio recording, or we can forget to send something to the client. And the producers all like, they're the one herding the cats. They're really good at that. And, without great producers, sometimes we would drop the ball. So I think, if that's your thing, if you love making sure everything gets in order and getting everybody in order, then I think, that could be a really interesting role for yourself. So as you can see, the industry has a lot of different places where you can fit. And, at the same time, I know a lot of people that started one place and they end up another place as well. I know strategists, or I know creatives that are amazing creatives, but they start as strategists, or account handlers that started as, creatives, So I think it's all very, once you get into the industry, you'll then figure out, actually, I'm much better at that. I'd like to do more of this, but this kind of gives you an overall kind of idea of what happens. So that's how to make a campaign. And that's kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis. So the next part of here is, I think, as the title of my talk says, I think it's kind of a bit about my journey and how I got here, because I don't know a lot of American creatives now that I think about it. There's not a lot of Americans in advertising that I know of. I know a lot of account handlers, but not a lot of creatives. So how did I get here? First of all, I went to community college after high school because I had really bad grades. I had really, really bad grades, and no university wanted me. So all the art schools wanted me, but none of the universities wanted me. So I wasn't the kind of person that was built for the kind of AP classes and like traditional education. So I went to community college. I actually excelled there. Weirdly enough, I started getting really good grades. So I thought, oh, maybe I should go into law, or like, do what my parents want me to do and become a doctor or something. Maybe there's some chance in there. But then I ended up getting actually into a program to do some fashion PR, and realized I actually really still love communication. And it was something that I could use my creative muscles for. Realized fashion PR wasn't for me. It was fun, but unfortunately, like the sign says, fashion PR is a bit for bitches. So no offense. So what happened next was that I actually started looking into art schools abroad, because I had a friend that just told me, he went to high school with me, and he said he came back one day from Christmas kind of break, and he said, I go to school in London. And I was like, that's possible. You know, when you meet someone that all of a sudden just opens your mind and says, I didn't think that was a possible opportunity for me, right? And once I met someone who actually went and did it, all of a sudden I said, well, why can't that be me? You know, why do I have to limit myself to what I have here at my front doorstep? And so then I applied, and then I got in. And then I used my student loan that would have been for a school in the US. Instead, I went to do to a school in the UK, which actually turned out cheaper, weirdly enough. And it's only 3 years instead of 4 or 5. So it worked out for my mom. My mom loved it. She thought that was great. Um, and then after I graduated, I did a lot of kind of going around doing a lot of junior work. So I did a placement program at TBWA, won a competition with my copywriter partner at the time. We did their Young Bloods program in 2012, which is ages ago. Really sad when I look at how long ago that was. And then I did a lot of stints with my partner as well. I mean, so one thing I need to mention is that when you're a creative, you usually go as copywriter, art director teams. So that's what I mean when I say my partner. So one of you is an art director, looks at the pretty pictures, and the other one does the pretty words. So I did a lot of different like agencies, went through loads of them, did like above the line, which is kind of TV and radio and print, through to social agencies, which is obviously, you know, Facebook, Instagram, all that. And then digital agencies, which were really popular back in the day, where you would like 3D print, I don't know, like robots and 3D printing and making banners and stuff like that, which is your digital agency. And then finally, I guess that then brings me to where I got now. So yeah, I kind of just went through the ranks, did all the different types of agencies, and really found out that I just loved it. I just kind of just kept going with it. I think there's just one thing I really want to kind of mention, and I'm going to do this through this picture of my family. So this is my family. I'm right in the middle there. This is us doing Christmas last year. And I was looking at this, and I remember talking to all my cousins, because they're all now like in college, or they just graduated, or they're going to finish or whatever. And I realized that, you know, we're a second generation immigrant family. So we're Filipino, and I noticed that everybody is some sort of like, you know, nurse, doctor, engineer, nurse, lawyer, whatever, right? So if you come from a family like that says, you know, no, you really should take the safe route. You know, the safe route is that, you know, your auntie's a nurse and she's doing really well, or your mom's an engineer and she's doing really well. You know, and I can understand like going into something that's creative, or if you're the first person in your family going to something that's about communications, can be really scary, because it took a lot for me to tell my family, like, look, you just have to trust me. Like, look, all these people, they know what they're doing, and I'm having a really good time, and I'm excelling at what I'm doing. So it's about getting all these people's trust to know that I know that everyone else is going to be a doctor or an engineer, but you just gotta trust me. So I think it took a lot of effort to say, you know what, I'm gonna be this badass. I'm gonna go to art school, and I'm gonna go across the world. But you just gotta trust me. And you know, if you have any questions about that, you know, we can definitely talk about it, because I think it's one of those things that I love, because here in the UK, I'm on the kind of like diversity council for the PR industry here, and I think it's just about getting more people, you know, whether it's like about class or race or anything like that, just getting more people into the industry and kind of diversifying it as well. So I think it's really interesting part of that. I just think we should definitely kind of touch on. So that is kind of my journey in kind of a nutshell. There's obviously a lot more kind of throughs and fro's in that. But I guess what I want to do is kind of talk to you about kind of 3 things that that I just, you know, would have loved to know before I kind of got into the industry. So the first thing is that I think you really need to be compulsive. You need to have compulsive curiosity, right? And what that means is it means absorbing everything and anything. So it's about going to, you know, it's about going to museums, it's about reading books, it's about reading magazines, it's about reading news, it's about reading everything and absorbing and being a sponge. And that means, you know, talking to people that you normally wouldn't talk to. It's about I think at the heart of it, it's about empathy, because what makes good creative, right, is when you have a really great insight. And what an insight is when you're able to look at, at the people you're trying to communicate to and go, what is it like to be in your shoes? What is going to make you what's going to make you buy this whiskey? What's going to make you check your breasts? What's going to make you I know, if you're a mother in, I don't know, Nottingham, and you're like 48 with 3 kids, that's not me, but how can I understand and empathize with you so that I can communicate better with you? And that's why I think having empathy, but also having this endless need to be really curious is just so important. So make sure that after university, because you spend your whole time in university and school always being curious, forcing yourself to, whether it's forced to be reading something, but you just always have to make sure that you're absorbing and taking in everything as you can, because that's what makes the best creatives, and that's the ones that keep making interesting work. Because as a creative, your work you're only as good as your last piece that you've done. And that means you need to stay on top of culture, especially if you want to stay in PR. It's all about culture, isn't it? So you need to make sure that you're always absorbing what's out there. So on the second point, obviously, Rose, you know this one, because I obviously this was my last talk, but I love this slide so much because I saw it in a talk as well when I was, I don't know, like maybe like 8 years ago or something. But this whole thing about stop comparing your behind the scenes with everyone else's highlights reel, because in this industry you're going to fail like a lot, and you're going, like, there's so many days where none of my work ever goes anywhere, and so many great ideas that have died, so many clients I've lost, so many of these amazing things that just never come to light. So it's all about, just stop comparing what's going on behind the scenes for yourself, and just looking at what's going on with others, because what everyone else is posting online, the articles that they write, the amazing highs, you're always seeing the amazing highs and never really witnessing their lows. And it's really easy to slow yourself down when you're only looking at it that way. So I think, especially when you're a creative, it's one of those things where you make stuff and you just need to know that things are going to die. So you need to make sure that you got a bit of thick skin, and you remember that it's just, everyone has a behind the scenes, right? And then finally, I think this is kind of linked to the second one, where I think it's a bit cliche, be brave and do what you love, but it's so important. It's so important because I said, you're going to fail so much. And when I say fail, it means even you trying to apply for jobs right now, because right now it's really, really tough. I mean, I started when the recession happened, and it was tough then. It was like super tough then, but it's super tough now, right? It's different now. The rules are different now. So especially now, it's so important to be super brave, and what are you going to do to stick out on a Zoom call with a creative director when you're doing an interview? What are you going to do in your portfolio to make sure that you're going to be the one that's out there? And it's also saying that, being brave, that even when you do fail and you don't get those interviews, you don't get the replies back, that, if this is what you love, you just have to keep doing it. And I think that's the one thing that has kept me going throughout all these years, because it's so easy to, when your client destroys your work right in front of you, or when your boss destroys your, because a lot of the work, right, the 3 slides I showed you, there was actually 20 slides there. The 3 pieces that I showed you there about the different ways, the executions that we could have done the breast campaign, there's 20 ideas on there, and my boss easily goes, it's shit, right? Some bosses are nicer, but a lot of bosses will just look at your posters and look through them and then immediately toss them away. So it's about being brave and kind of doing what you love still, and making sure that you kind of roll with that. And then I guess, I think there's a kind of, for me, my kind of trick with this was always, I have this thing on my desk. I have this thing on my desk, right? So there's 2 sides to it. And some days I will come back from my client meetings and I will be so pissed off because it didn't go the way that I wanted to. And so I turned it onto this side, which is the shit happens side, because you know what? Shit happens. It happens all the fucking time. And as a creative, you just roll with it. But you know, it's not even just about being a creative, right? It's about life. Like life, shit happens. Like all the bad shit happens. But you know what? You just gotta absorb it and like just roll with it and just accept it and really like yell at all the obscenities that you want to on this shit happens side, right? But you don't let it take over you, because otherwise you're not going to make any more work. And that's just going to suck for you, right? Because you still want to do what you love, right? So then what I would do then is then flip it over to the other side, which is the don't give up, you can do it. And apparently when I got this, it was this woman was just handing out flyers, and I remember getting this. I was having a shit day and she gave it to me, and I was like, all right, I'm going to keep this as a memory of this moment. So I think that's the kind of, that I have this on my desk because this is what it's like working in the industry, right? No matter if you're an account handler or producer, you're going to have the really shitty days where shit happens and nothing goes your way. Like, for example, this breast cancer campaign, literally, it was supposed to launch 2 weeks ago, but the day before, the client had cold feet and said she don't want to run it anymore. So you can imagine how I'm feeling and everyone else is feeling, especially because we spent so much time on it. So the whole team is like, oh my God, shit is happening. What do we do next? And I think it was just, you know, the way we got through that and the way we powered through and the way we actually got it to back out to launch was making sure we're like, okay, don't give up. You can do it. What are we going to do now? What is the solution that we're going to have? And eventually we ended up launching it, and it seems to be going really well. So yeah, so that's kind of my kind of spiel. I've kind of blitzed right through it, but I kind of wanted to leave you guys some time because I hope that there's some questions from you guys.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear me before, you can put your questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and then you can speak to Jaenelle directly. But in the meantime, I have some questions. So after you said you get presented ideas from a strategist, how long does it take you usually to like come up with ideas? And if you're ever like not able to think of anything, like what do you do?
Okay, so this is a two-parter. Okay, so first part on how long does it take? So when you get briefed, they'll be like, okay, we need to present next week, or we need to present in 3 weeks, or we need to present in a month, or in 2 days. I will do it until literally the last minute because I'm always trying to better myself. An exercise that my old boss used to give me when we were doing like just posters, he would like make a grid on a piece of paper and he'd be like, fill in 100 posters. You know, like it's about just training your brain to think of ideas. And when you first start out, you know, that's why, you know, I have this like board here of all these Post-its, and it's literally just like each one's an idea, and I just keep going through even the shitty ones, right? Because the shitty ideas, something might come out of it that's really interesting. So I will literally take as long as I can to come up with it. And then the second one, what was the second one again?
If you're ever like unable to think of something, like what do you do?
I think this is where it's really important to have your partner. When I was talking about earlier, there's like an art director, copywriter kind of team. It's really important when you're first starting out to have that duo. Sometimes people don't hire in teams, but I'm still of the thought that I really like a teammate because it means that you have each other to kind of bounce off. If not, then you use your creative director. I use my strategist a lot because they're quite like creative minded. But you know, it actually really helps. Like so far, obviously, like this is a totally new space. You know, I work from home now. I don't have my team around me. I'll just go for a walk, to be honest. I'll literally go for a walk. I will watch Netflix. I will, because like, you know that the breast cancer campaign actually came from me watching the animated show on Netflix, Midnight Gospel. Like,
Yes,
you
I
know,
saw that. Like,
yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean by being really curious, no matter what, right? That's why it's so important to watch stuff like that. But then you watch, I don't know, I was watching Sex and the City and I had another idea that came from that. You know what I mean? It's about saying like, I'm going to watch everything and anything because you never know where an idea is going to come out of that. Because that's all ideas are. They're just random thoughts in your head that end up like coming together. So in the office, sometimes they'll catch me like watching something really random and they'll go, oh no, it's fine because she's a creative. It's
Yes.
part of the job. But yeah.
We have a question from a participant. How do you search or find creators to work with?
Okay, cool. So in the UK, there's this thing called single creatives. I'm assuming there's probably something like that in the States, where it's almost like a dating thing. It's like a funny little dating thing. So also you might look into, like, if you're more of a copywriter kind of type, then go look in art universities and see look at the portfolios, who's graduated, and reach out to them and say, I said that you studied advertising. Do you want to just do a brief together, see what it's like? And when I say do a brief, like what I would do when I was testing out new creatives, new partners, we would go to the grocery store. We'd get like the most random thing. Let's say it's like a jar of mayonnaise. I don't know, jar of mayonnaise. And we're like, okay, this is the thing we're going to advertise. What's the most interesting way to do this, like Hellman's mayonnaise ad, right? And then that's us doing a test. And you can literally do that with whatever you want to pick up. It's that whole like Wolf of Wall Street thing about sell me this pen. Like that's what, because that's what your briefs are going to be. Your briefs are literally going to be, I don't know, like it could be anything from, there's a new asthma inhaler that you need to sell, and you figure that out. So that's a good test is just try out with your, when you find someone to kind of bounce off ideas, see what's the chemistry like, see, can you guys actually come up with ideas together? When you're trying to find a partner, it's, if you want to look for an art director, look in the art universities, because they're already like actual art directors. Then there's also places like the One Club that has like a network. I know in the US, the One Club is like an advertising kind of specific, creative advertising kind of thing. So the One Club, they have specific ones as well. Let's see, like Miami Ad School and stuff like that. I know in the States, they do a lot of like proper, like this is going to be like creatives kind of partnering together. But yeah, check out single creatives and then see if they have like a US kind of partnership as well.
Okay. Nicole, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, Jaenelle, the campaign that you were talking about and were showing us is not necessarily graphic, but there are some pieces in it that are kind of like, like the mouth. I know you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering, was that part of the intention with that, or is that part of like European culture, like it's more accepted to have bodies like pictured in that way? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when we did this campaign, right, and I was talking to so when I was doing the interviews, a lot of the women that I talked to, they really painted a picture for me. Like a lot of them were being really honest and vulnerable with me when they were telling their stories. And there's a lot of stories, and a lot of them were really hard to hear. A lot of them were really funny to hear. There's like a few scenes in there of this woman who's like, she's obviously about to like engage in some sort of like, kind of like, she's going to engage in some, I guess with the foaming at the mouth thing, right? That came from a scene when my friend was telling me where she felt really uncomfortable with this guy that she went to a party with. And she said all of a sudden he didn't feel like a guy anymore. He just felt like this monster. And that's what I relayed back to the director. And this is how she interpreted it, right? And there's a lot of these scenes that my client was like, ooh, I don't know. And I was like, look, there's some honesty that I would like to tell. Because it's not going on TV, we have a bit of flexibility. So we can just do it. And you know what? That is a big talking point. A lot of people, they go, how do they get away with that? How can it? But it's like, you know what? There are moments where a lot of women look at it and they go, I know what that feels like. And you know what? The whole thing is that with this film, it's not about, I think you can look at this film and you're going to find yourself in it. You're not going to be in every scene, but you're going to find yourself in it. I think that's the most important thing, because it's all about saying that no matter how you feel about them, I want you to check them. No matter if you've experienced this or this or this or this or this, I want you to make sure you keep checking your breasts.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit more about that relationship that you have to have with the client in order to kind of like pull them to your side and go with your advice and those things too? Because that's difficult sometimes to get them to follow your vision.
Yeah, no, it's you come well armed. I think that's really important because I think there's only so much sell that you can do. When, you know, there's lots of emotive sell that you got to do, but at the same time, you need to have your facts to back it up, right? So a lot of the scenes, I would have to justify and be like, look, this is literally what women have told me. Have a listen to the podcast that I've recorded, the recordings that I've done. This is literally women's stories, and they're choosing to be vulnerable with me. This is not something you would hear all the time. You know, this might be something you hear with your girlfriends, but they're choosing to do this with me, and I want to make sure I'm telling their stories. You know, because each one of those is like a real story. So it's about going with your facts back with the client, because, and also it's about maintaining that relationship of, okay, I'm going to take out this piece, but let's keep that piece in, because, you know, you want to make sure that you're having a conversation and it's not this one-sided thing. I'm like, I'm going to force you to do this. And it's also vice versa, because why should they hire us if it's not right? You know, like otherwise they would just do it themselves, because we're the experts here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Rick, do you want to go?
Sorry, yes, thank you. So my question is, in order to actually build our chops and like start developing skills, how do we get our hands on prompts or creative briefs that are for like academic or practice purposes? The last time I've asked this question, somebody threw me to youngshits.com, and that's about all I've got.
Okay, so Rick, do you mean like so like do you want to like build a portfolio so that you can then show it? Yeah. Okay. You know what I might do is put into this chat like my very first portfolio, just so you can see how shit it is, by the way. So I think that's really good to know that your first portfolio won't be the best thing you ever do in your life. But like, I think you don't have to necessarily be live briefs, right? Like sometimes it's good to have a live brief because it means that you're competing against other people. So when I was doing this, it still might be up, but there's this Twitter thing that is like 1 minute briefs, for example, right? This thing called 1 minute briefs where there's a daily brief that goes on, and it's just like to keep showing your muscles and how, and then they pick a winner. You know, so maybe you do a couple of those, maybe you win one, you put that into your portfolio, or you do the exercise I'm talking about where you know, we just picked out, went to the grocery store and we picked out some stuff, right? And we just did this, because I think when you go into a place, they know that you have no work because you haven't started, right? All they want to know is how creative are you? How are you good at answering the questions? How are you good at finding solutions? And then also, I think what's really good is making sure that when you go in there with your portfolio, is tailoring it to the creative director that you want to get hired by. So let's say they're like really into TV ads, right? But they're not really into social. Then you want to do some really good TV ads for these people, right? So if your dream is to go work at Wyden Kennedy and make some amazing TV ads, you want to work for Nike, right? Like, then have a go, right? And then what you do is then you work with that creative director. You say, look, I have no idea, you know, this probably isn't the right thing, but I think it's the best thing I can do. And then build that kind of relationship with them, and they'll give you like, the best thing you can do actually is stroke their ego and be like, look, I really love that work that you did. That last campaign that you did was really great. Can you just help me build it? How can I make this better, right? There's nothing, I think that's also a really good tip when you go there. It's not about saying like, this is all I can do. It's about saying, I want you to help me actually make this better. And then that's how you create the connections. Because let's say they stay there, they might hire you. They say, this kid really wants it. You really want to come here and you want to work on Nike. You want to work and make the new next thing, right? Or they might go, you know, I'm moving to a new place, but I want to take you with me. So I think that's kind of what I've learned and what's really helped me.
Great. Yeah. So where might be able to see the first portfolio? Just because I'd like to get my hands on just something I can kind of like.
Yeah, digest. You want to see my really horrible first portfolio? Rose, can I send you that into an email and you can just send it to everyone that was in here, or do I put in the chat or something?
In the chat, because I don't have the emails of the people.
Okay, no worries. Let me see if I can find it right now.
I think you.
I will find it. But if there's any other questions, please continue, and I will.
Someone said, "Do I have to go to an art school in order to have a job as cool as yours? They're currently a junior majoring in advertising."
No, you don't have to go to art school at all. Hold on, wait. While I have you guys here, Rick, it's called. Or actually, Nicole, can I just put into the messages and you can give it to everyone as well? Oh, no, she's gone. Rose, I'll put in there and you can have it as well. There you go. Cool. Awesome. So Yes, you don't have to go to art school. I know a lot of people who didn't go to art school at all to go into it's just that it gave me some skills like because they just focused on creative direction. Those are the kind of skills. It might be helpful like to get a bit of like just a short course or a small course on what creative direction is like, because I've given you a little taste of it, but I think if you really want to go into creative direction, you could do a small course on it, so that you know how to exercise the muscles. But you don't have to go into an art school, right? It's just about, for me, it's about building the portfolio and showing me that you can make great ideas. Like I've hired people that did like, he did like a biology major, you know, and now he's a creative director. So I think that's, as long as you have the kind of creative skill, that's what's most important.
Okay. And do you have any tips for students who are looking to move internationally and work straight out of college?
I would say so. The hardest thing for me, right, was making sure I had a visa. I know it's quite technical already, like we're getting to the nitty gritty bit, but the visa is so hard to get. And there's been so many moments in my life where I'm like super stressed because I'm like, how am I going to get another visa to stay here? So an easier way to do it, right? It's a bit longer. It's not like an immediate jump, but it's, you know, for example, you go to Weber Shandwick, San Francisco, you go to New York or wherever, right? Go to Weber Shandwick in the US, and then you can transfer over into Weber Shandwick London or Singapore or wherever, right? That's one way to do it, just because you're already within the system. Once you're in the system, it's easy to transfer over. The hardest thing, right, is literally that when you want to work abroad, they just go, it's really expensive to literally physically move you all the way here. And the visa is really expensive. But if you're already in the system and you've already kind of almost proven yourself, especially as a junior, that's the hard part, is that it's going to be harder for you to show your credentials in order for them to invest, because that's what they're doing, right? They're investing about it's about £3,500 per visa, so plus moving costs and all these kind of different things as well. So I would say go through like the actual network, and then you can move through. And also you need to remember that networks and advertising are huge. So Weber Shandwick is part of the McCann World Group. So you go through McCann, you might then go into another agency and another agency. They're all interconnected, really. Yeah.
Okay. Someone said, I've had a really hard time convincing my parents that PR is the right choice for me. My family is from India, and all of my family and cousins either have a business degree or are in medical school, engineers, lawyers, etc. So could you go a little more in depth about your journey about convincing your parents?
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's definitely hard to do. There's definitely you know what, you're going to come definitely with the resistance, right? Because they're like, no one in my family has done this. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know how this works. How am I supposed to trust? Because at the end of the day, right, all your parents really want is that they want you to succeed. That's all it is, right? They're just worried about, are you going to be okay? And it's as simple as that. And one of the things that I've been trying to do actually with my friend here is, like, one thing that he told me was like, you know what, in the UK, a creative director makes more money than a doctor. Like sometimes that's the thing that like tips over my parents, unfortunately, you know, like sometimes it's just saying that as like, you know, if you come from an Indian family, like similar to an Asian family, if I just go, you know, mom, let me just tell you, and then she'd be like, oh, okay, actually maybe that's all right. And it's stable. Because I think when they hear communications, they don't know that there's loads of people that actually, and I think one of the good things is actually showing all these really successful people that have done it. I think that has also really helped when I go, mom, look at all these successful people that kind of look like me that have done it. Because I've had, you know, and this is like a bit of a harsh truth, but I've had like, you know, people to come to me and they tell me, oh, my parents didn't want me to do this, because they go, yeah, but you're not the kind of person that works in advertising. You know, there's no one that looks like you in advertising that is successful. And I've had to have these, you know, I've had younger people tell me these conversations they had with their parents, and it's a unfortunate truth that happens. But I think it's about showing the proof, like showing the facts, just like when you do a client, you show the facts, and then you can kind of move with that kind of emotion with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can always just email me more if you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I can give you some tips.
Okay. And how different is the work environment, do you think, in like London compared to the US?
So I've only done small stints in the US. I haven't like properly worked in the States because I studied here and then continued working here. But my favorite thing, can I just tell you, is the 25 days of holiday. I really like that. I really like my 25 days of holiday that I have to take. I am forced to take them. From what I've heard and comparing it with my friends that work in advertising agencies, is that the pace is, you know, it's a bit more like, I'd say it's a bit more relaxed. They really think about, like, I know this is getting into a bit more of the adulting of it, but, you know, they think about maternity leave, paternity leave. They want you to have a work-life balance. And obviously it depends on what agency you work at. They're all very different.
Mhm.
I think that's also really important to know, is that every single agency is literally like joining a family. So you need to find the family that you want to be part of. So I think it's the main difference for me is that the work-life balance is much better, I find. But one thing that you need to know when you do work internationally is that you need to understand the culture. I wanted at one point to move to Japan, and I realized I couldn't because there's so much of culture that I can't understand. It would take me another decade to learn the culture. So me being here in the UK for this long amount of time means I understand the UK culture. So if I go back to the States, I'd actually have to relearn the culture, because the culture that's in my mind is the day-to-day culture is from when I was like 20. So I need to think about what's that going to be like. So I think that's really important, is understand those little nuances. But you'll just learn that as you pick it up along the way. But I think that's what's really important.
Okay. And Taylor, do you want to go?
Yes. Okay. So I was just going to ask you, you might have kind of already answered this, but like if I were to go to an art school and if I wanted to become a creative director, like what is that, like actually like a major at an art school, or is it something else? Like what would I be applying for, I guess?
Let's see. Some schools have it. So like if you wanted to, so I'm assuming, Taylor, that you're doing a BA right now, like a bachelor's.
Yes, I'm about to graduate with a PR degree.
Okay, cool. So if you wanted to, there's places like that really focus in advertising, like creative direction, like Miami Ad School, for example. A place like that really focuses on it. So they would offer a creative direction course, right? So for example, like my degree is, I got a bachelor's at St. Martin's, which is an art school, but it was under the graphic design program. And then there's a pathway, which is all about creative direction. So I just did advertising as my focus. And I just did that, all the excess classes in advertising, because I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
And my last question, I know you mentioned like being constantly curious as an important thing for you. Is there any other like skills or like mindsets that someone should have if they wanted to pursue like creative direction?
You know what? What I've noticed as I've gotten older is that I haven't gotten older. You know, I think that's part of the curiosity thing, but it's also just this job is about staying young. Even because even my boss, who's I think in his 50s, he feels young, you know, he feels young, and he's not letting, like, obviously he has all the stuff that he's learned throughout the years, and like he makes smarter decisions and all these kind of things, but he's still willing to make mistakes. He's still willing to take risks. And the thing is that when we get older, we're less likely to take these like exciting risks. And what makes good work is actually the risks that we take. So I think making sure you keep that really awesome energy that you guys all have at the moment, right? Like keeping all that energy and excitement, and the thing that makes us feel really young still as we keep going. Because I think that's actually what makes good work. Optimism as well, like really being optimistic.
Okay. I mean, that's all the questions that I have. If anybody else doesn't have any more questions, then that's all. We recorded this session, so if you miss anything or if you wanted to return to anything that she said or presented, it will be posted on our website pretty soon. But that's all I have. Is that all on your part, Jaenelle?
Yeah, no, but yeah, if you guys just want to, you know, drop me a little email or whatever, give me a shout, especially if you come to London. I'll be more than happy to show you around.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this and speaking to students.